Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about leadership and empowerment, communication, diversity, and all the things you know to be a speaker who can get results. We are recording today for the Hispanic Heritage Month or Latinx Heritage Month, featuring a wonderful guest, Ana Dapelo-Garcia. And she is the founder of Lean In Latinas, which is the Latino version of Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In Circles. She was born and raised in San Francisco, and so she's got a master's of public administration from the University of San Francisco, and was named as the Silicon Valley Business Journal Women of Influence, and also from the Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, which spells hope, the Leadership Institute. She's had so many awards, named as Woman of the Year by Women Healthcare Executives. She's been a state commissioner with the state of California, and board member for the Hispanic Foundation of Silicon Valley, and currently vice chair and board member for the University of San Francisco, her alma mater. Since 2015, she's been the regional program leader for leadin.org, and where she was featured in the New York Times. She's also been heard on multiple radio stations, and is really quite an important person and much awarded person. And as well, she's a very interesting conversationalist. So let's go on to the interview with Ana Dapelo-Garcia. Ana Dapelo-Garcia, welcome to Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to have you and excited to be having you as part of our Hispanic Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage Month, whatever, all the many things that are involved. And before we get to talking about your very interesting project, tell me, who would be your dream interview? If you could speak with someone who is no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Oh, I love that question. And it was hard to sort of pin one particular person, but I sort of thought about the pivot that I've made in my life and really being what I'd call a fierce advocate for equality and on equity and on issues that impact women, particularly women of color. And the resilience that I've had to have, the tenacity that I've had to have, the just relentless, that's a word that one of my colleagues has used for me, just somebody who's just relentless and just willing to get up every day, no matter how hard the good fight is. And there were a number of people that came to mind, but I think, for me, I and for many, many, many people, somebody who embodies sort of these characteristics of what it takes to just be relentless in your messaging and your advocacy would probably be somebody like Martin Luther King. He's just somebody that I see that no matter the support or the criticisms, he just pursued his dream for fighting for people within his community. And I feel the same way in just my tenacity and unwillingness to give up on what I think is right.
Wow. So what would you ask him? Because I would be there, you bet.
I'd ask him for advice because it certainly impacts, my ability to keep up with other things that are just as important, whether that's my family, whether that's my personal relationships with my husband, or uh, with my daughter, with my grandchildren. And there are concessions that you do make along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those decisions that you make that sometimes feel like, could I be at home spending time, with my
Yeah.
family? And why am
Yeah.
I, here at the Women's March, advocating for what I think, it's really hard to equally parse out all of your priorities in your life, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and just the resilience that you have to have, and being feeling like you're not really moving the needle, but knowing that the next day is just another day and another
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to try to move that needle, and recognizing that you can't do it alone. That
Ah,
you
yes.
need to do it with your community. You need to do it with people who might be allies,
Mm-hmm.
and also recognizing that it's not just the generation that you're in that you have to advocate for. You have to really recognize that it will take many generations,
Mm-hmm.
to really help close these gaps. So I would probably ask him, what helped you persevere through a lot of those challenges?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I would love to be part of that. I'd love to hear that interview. Uh,
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
so Anna, um, you started a group called Lean In Latinas. And for anyone in our audience who doesn't know what Lean In is, can you explain first about the Lean In phenomenon and
Yeah.
who the author was and all of that?
Yeah. So the phenomenon was Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg, who was the prior chief operating officer for Facebook, now known as Meta. She penned the book Lean In, and it just went viral, not only
Mm-hmm.
in this country, but around the world. And as a result of that book, she partnered with the co-founder of Lean In, Rachel Thomas, and they came up with this concept of what's called circles, which is typically a smaller group of primarily women that come together, and talk about how they can lean in, around issues that women face in the workplace, whether it's underrepresentation, um, lack of equality in pay, microaggressions, unconscious bias. And I, about 6, 7 years ago, I picked up the book Lean In, but I was always picking up books where I could maybe, find a couple pearls of wisdom, and
Mm-hmm.
what I could do differently in the workplace. And I read the book and I was inspired by it. And I found out about Lean In Circles, and I went to their website, and there were many here in the Bay Area of where I live. But for whatever reason, Elizabeth, I never joined one of those circles, and I really didn't know why. And one Sunday morning, I was drawn right back to that website, still
Mm-hmm.
interested in how I can get involved. And I saw a button that said create your own circle. And I was
Ah,
inspired by that. And I pressed on the button, not really knowing exactly what was going to happen. And I did get a screen that said, what would you like to name your circle? What's the mission and vision of your circle? And within 10 minutes or less, somehow I came up with Lean In Latinas. And when I did that, I realized in that moment the reason I didn't join any of the other circles because none of them spoke to me in the way I identify.
aha.
And that's sort of when that light bulb went off. And because many of these circles are geographically identified, Lean In
Mm-hmm.
Palo Alto, Lean In San Francisco. So I put in Lean In Latinas, and I put in a mission and vision and hit enter, not knowing exactly what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And within about a couple of days, the first person who wanted to join my circle said, I'm a first generation college graduate Latina, and I want to be around other like minded Latinas.
Mm-hmm.
Another person wrote in, I'm a Latina engineer in a primarily white male dominated environment, and I'd like to learn how to navigate in this environment. The first meeting was myself and three people who didn't know me, and I was completely fascinated by this because it was a Saturday morning. I could be a terrible person, but they're showing up at my doorstep, and I really knew that I had to do a lot of intentional listening. And I wanted to really understand what would compel these people on a day off to show up at a stranger's house, seeking a community to have conversation. Within 6 months, it was about 100 people.
Wow. Can you explain what's the basic concept of lean in? So leaning in is a leaning in towards the table. Where does the name come from?
Yeah, so I won't try to pretend to be inside Sheryl Sandberg's mind, but my interpretation of it is, where can we lean in as females to help? Like, for example, I will discuss around representation. So recently, Lean In released the 2024 State of Latinas in Corporate America report. And I was very honored to be one of the contributors, part of their brain trust on this report. So Latinas represent 1% of executive level roles across corporate America, which is a very hard number for me to get situated in my head, because I've been in the workforce for many decades. And when I first started in my career, I didn't see women that looked like me in roles that I aspired to be in. And here we are 35, 40 years later, and it's 1%. So it's really, what can we do to lean in to change some of these unfortunate statistics? And it could be simple strategies around where do you sit at the table? Are you at the table? Are you not at the table where decisions are being made? Are you negotiating for pay? Are you becoming familiar with what is unconscious bias? What are microaggressions? How do you deal through microaggressions? What can you do? But again, one thing I would say is that although there's actions we can take, but to also recognize that solving these issues do not rest solely on the shoulders of women. Companies need to lean in as well. What are they doing to be more inclusive? What are they doing to look at their pipeline? So I think the words lean in can be used in a number of ways.
I think of it also as so for women, so often we tend to lean back, lean out, and observe because that's safe. And as I remember, and I read the book when it first came out, so I don't remember the details as well as you must, but it would be lean in and take part of the conversation. Lean in and say, yes, I want to be heard. Yes, this is important. My voice is important. I'm all about helping women be heard. So leaning in to be part of the circle instead of leaning out and observing from the outside, from the sidelines. Would that be fair?
100% on point. And what I was thinking about and listening to you was my experience when I first entered the workforce in probably the most prominent way. So I work for a very large academic medical center. And when I got a job, my parents said to me, Anna, whatever you do, keep your head down. Don't cause any trouble. You're lucky to have that job. And, my father really, he came from that perspective because of the experiences he had as a Latino, particularly in the Army, where he dealt with a lot of racism and discrimination. And in his way, he was trying to protect me. The unfortunate thing that happened, though, that it immediately silenced my voice. It immediately made me feel inferior. and immediately made me feel that I needed to be leaning out, being invisible, not speaking up. And so what Lean In has done for me is the opposite. It's given me more confidence. It's allowed me to lean in when I was afraid and I stayed leaning out. Mm-hmm. And you're 100% right. And it's made me more brave. It's made me feel more confident and connected me to a very large community, a global community of women who are leaning in, not just in this country, but across many countries. And so you're spot on.
One of the things that I have noticed in my work with women and men is how important it is for women to have the support of a community, of a group, of a cohort. And I've done over and over, I've seen that where women won't raise their hand to speak. So I've been a presentation skills trainer for almost 15 years now, and I talk to event organizers around the world, and I say, why is it 95% men at your conference? And most of them will say, we'd love to have women, but if we ask a woman, she'll say, oh, well, I'm not really ready yet. And, ask me again next year, which of course they never do. They'll never ask you next year if you turn down this year. But having a group with you to say, you could do this, go for it. Or even don't chicken out, make sure that you do it. That has made such a difference. Where do you think that comes from?
As far as what I hear when I'm listening is those moments of a crisis of confidence. And so, Lean In Latinas, and I think also that this would apply to many circles that are part of the Lean In organization. There is power in community. Mm-hmm. And so, we have a mantra within Lean In Latinas called learn, share, and grow. Mm-hmm. So learn is, each member wants to learn something, whether that is to have more confidence, to that you do say that yes to a presentation. You don't lean out. They want to share with each other. We have actually a career coaches circle to partner with people like you who exude confidence, who would not say no, but they want to share with each other. They want to uplift each other. And then finally, they want to grow in some capacity. So it's interesting. So our circle leader for our career coaches group, she initially put the circle together thinking it would be people like you coming to the table as professional career coaches. And what she ended up realizing is that most of the members were that person who might say no to that presentation. And so most of the members of that group are looking for that support and have now a community, a circle of women who are professional coaches, but also the women who want to be that professional coach, who want to have that confidence. So there's definitely a power in that. As far as I had myself personally, I had to work on my own confidence, and what the State of Latinas in Corporate America report also talks about is what's cultural norms. Culturally, it's not comfortable to how we see bragging about our accomplishments, getting comfortable with that. And one of the recommendations that the report has is, managers, people managers being cognizant of the differences in culture. Mm-hmm. And in some cultures, I wasn't brought up to have my voice at the table. I was, my upbringing was you're a child. This is adult talk. This is, so I wasn't, brought up in an environment where I felt comfortable in presenting either my opinion or my recommendation. So I think there's a number of factors with that. But I also think that I think women in general, there's an opportunity to become more confident, particularly in environments where we might be onlys, where we might be minorities. Again,
by onlys, you mean the only woman in the room?
The only woman in the room.
Or certainly the minority, the only woman of color in the room.
Right. So I was the first Latina executive director at my place of employment. And while I'm really proud of that, being an only can be very challenging. Mm-hmm. And in the report, there is a section around being an only. And not only did I feel that I had to work harder to demonstrate my competence as being the only female Latina as an executive director, I also felt the weight of trying to represent my community, not just my own competence, but what can I do to help further open the door for other people who look like me to be at this table? So
I've heard that from so many people who say, I have to be perfect because if I do something wrong, it then counts against every woman.
Yes.
And even more so if you're a woman of color.
Yes, 100%. And so you feel like you have a higher bar that you have to get over. So yes, the presentation sounds great, but I have to work extra hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I must say that the recordings I've seen of you presenting, you've been awesome. So so it has really helped. It's really made a difference. One of the things, so there's we're recording this in 2024, and there have been in the last couple of years a big pushback in America, at least, against diversity measures. And what are you hoping for as an advocate for equality and representation for Latina women? Actually, sometimes it seems like the only diversity we notice is between Black and white.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I can understand that. I appreciate why that happens. But there are many, many dimensions of diversity, and it's not exclusive to gender, race, or ethnicity. It's also around disability. It's also around LGBTQ. It's also around veterans and age. So there's many dimensions of diversity. But my hope is that we stay committed as a country. And that's really hard to say, given what is happening in the political arena. That, when I first started in this department in DEI, it was a little quiet. People knew that it was important to start the department. But, when the George Floyd murder occurred, it was a tsunami of requests that were coming into the department.
It would be the summer of 2020.
Yes, it was. We went from the phone ringing every couple of hours to every couple of minutes, and that was great because we do need to have the hard conversations, and we need to do the hard work. So it's easy to say it's been disappointing to see that companies are now retracting from their commitments or eliminating these types of departments. I'm really proud of the organization I'm part of that is still committed. I'm proud that the Lean In organization is continuing to grow and they have not taken their foot off the pedal. I think we are a very diverse country, and I don't think we have an option to ignore that, the diversity of our teams and how diversity matters and inclusion matters. So I get up every morning and I'm still going to pursue what I pursued 4 or 5 years ago because it's absolutely necessary, not only for this generation, but for the next generation. And I think that we become better as a society to recognize our differences and celebrate our differences. 10 years ago in the workplace, we didn't talk about Hispanic Heritage Month.
Right.
At the level that we do now, or Black History Month or Pride Month. And we did not take the time to immerse ourselves in the culture of other people. And I really hope that we don't stop doing that and we do it more and we celebrate each other more. I think we're stronger when we recognize our differences and appreciate them and leverage them.
Yes, right. Well, and just this whole feeling of community and community that can be inclusive as well as exclusive. I'm curious if we've got a listener here who is part of the white majority, male or female, and they want to know what it feels like to be Latina or Latino, what it feels like. How can you reach out without being insulting, but reach out to truly understand and widen your horizons?
Being authentic and honest and respectfully curious. So that's really one of the characteristics of an inclusive leader. And so we were able to leverage Deloitte's 6 signature traits of inclusive leadership, and we built a workshop around that. Because after George Floyd, there were many white employees who said, I don't know how to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. I want to be respectful. I want to learn more. As a person of color, there's a feeling you get from somebody who will ask that question. And when it's done authentically and respectfully, that. Mm-hmm. You can feel that and that. But there are ways to immerse yourself. What more can somebody learn? It's Hispanic Heritage Month. There are many articles out there. Have you read them? Mm-hmm. Are you interested into what is it and why is it celebrated? We have a number of, in the workplace, at least, many companies have employer resource groups, affinity groups. I often tell folks, and we're very intentional. We in our sort of the naming conventions of these groups, we always have the word allies attached to these groups, because you can't say you want to be inclusive and then have exclusive practices.
Oh, very good point. Yes.
It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people to join all of these groups to learn. And I'm still learning. Mm-hmm. So if I go to a meeting, maybe with the Pride Employee Resource Group, I'm learning more about pronouns. Why are pronouns important? What is that? What does it mean when somebody is transitioning?
So to explain that to those who don't live in this universe of pride and transitions, this is the pride groups would be the lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, etc. groups, and there are many people now who consider that they're not either he or she, and so they will use the pronoun they and theirs to be non-binary. So it has the whole spectrum of who you love and what your gender is has broadened immensely since I was a kid. So, yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes, and I think part of this journey for all of us is immerse yourself in understanding the viewpoints of different groups and different people. That's mm-hmm. part of the process. And so I want to learn more, whether it's among the Black community, the Asian Pacific Islander community, and it's not, and again, other types of communities. I think that, being curious and wanting to learn more is a first good step mm-hmm. to that. You know, asking yourself questions around, maybe do I need to diversify the people that I make friends with, or the places I go to, or the groups that I immerse myself in? Do I need to have diversity in that? There's many books out there. So there's a number of resources. It all really comes down to, is this a priority in your life? Is to really look at how you can see the world outside of the community that you're in.
Well, and being to see the world, put yourself in the shoes of others is one of the great joys of life, and helps us appreciate what other people are going through.
Yeah.
So how could somebody start then to somebody who's curious about LinkedIn or the LinkedIn Latinas? How can we find you, start something? Tell us more.
Yeah, we don't make it hard. We're really I see the power in allies. We can't do this work alone. We're not going to move the needle alone. And so, probably the first thing is leaninlatinas.org. That's the easiest way to find us. And we have a really wonderful and diverse membership. It's there's no membership fees. People can join either as a member of an existing circle. They can start their own circle. We're very open to how people would like to contribute. So we have circles that are geographically identified, whether it's Lean In Latinas Houston or in Canada. And then we have some that are around certain industries, like Lean In Latinas in healthcare. But we're very inclusive. And the prior mayor of San Jose, California, had reached out when I first started the group, and he sent an email and he said, "Ana, can a Latino, which is a male, somebody who's Latin, Latino, join?" And I had to give that a few minutes of thinking, and I said, "Absolutely." So we have people who identify in a number of ways. We just had our annual conference, and there's definitely was diversity in the audience, and I think that that's a benefit. I don't want us to look at the world in a vacuum. So, leaninlatinas.org is a good place to start. People follow us on LinkedIn. They follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And really, we don't put any pressure on how people would like to participate. They can observe what we're doing. I also have a Lean In Latinas live podcast that I do on LinkedIn. And so that's easy to access, and people who are curious listen in. And so there's a variety of ways that people can participate with us.
Great. Well, Ana Dapelo-Garcia, this has been such an interesting conversation and really very illuminating. Lean In is a wonderful resource.
Yes.
It's a really great resource, and I highly recommend anyone who's curious to check it out. So
yes.
Thank you so much for having been part of Speakers Who Get Results. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. If this was interesting, please tell your friends, subscribe to us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. That's the one that people track. So that's the one that enables us to get even better, more exciting guests. And in the meantime, I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.